A family of 4 in the United States spends between $600 and $20,700 per year on bottled and filtered drinking water, according to research published by Project Censored in 2024. And that number is rising every year. Meanwhile, in a farmhouse in Geauga County, Ohio, a woman named Ruth fills a pitcher of drinking water from a gravity-fed stone cistern beneath her home. That water passed through 4 layers of natural filtration: coarse sand, fine sand, activated charcoal, and limestone, and it costs her household approximately $0.014 per gallon, not 4 cents, not 4/10 of a cent, 4/10,000ths of a dollar, per gallon, for water her family has been drinking safely for 3 generations. The number that changes everything is this: $4 per gallon versus $4. $0 per gallon for standard bottled water, per pricing data compiled by the Carleton College Science Education Resource Center in 2014. That is a cost difference of 10,000 to 1. 10,000 times more expensive for a product the Amish have been producing in their own basements with their own hands, from materials that cost less than a fast food meal. If that number just stopped you, stay here. Subscribe to Tradition Done right now and turn on notifications. The algorithm will not bring this to you on its own. Hit like so someone else finds this today. Back to that farmhouse in Geauga County. What I found here was not a rustic workaround. It was not a survival trick. It was a multi-stage gravity filtration and rainwater collection system that has been operating in Amish communities across Lancaster County, Holmes County, and Indiana settlements since before the Second World War. The engineering is elegant. The materials cost almost nothing. The output is potable, clean water available on demand with no pump, no electricity, no monthly invoice, and no dependency on any municipal system or private water company. And there is a reason most Americans have never heard of it. In most municipalities across the United States, building this system as your primary drinking water source requires navigating a regulatory framework that was shaped not by public health science, but by the lobbying infrastructure of an industry that made $16 billion in 2017 selling you water in plastic bottles, according to research published by Truthout in 2018. Stay with me, because what I am about to show you is not just a cheaper way to drink water. It is proof that the most basic human need on Earth has been turned into a subscription service, and that the people who opted out figured it out a century ago. The Amish did not reject water systems. They rejected dependence. That difference is the entire story, because it explains why this knowledge survived in plain sight, while most Americans were taught to see it as old-fashioned or unnecessary. In Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, Holmes County, Ohio, Geauga County, Ohio, Wayne County, Ohio, and the Indiana settlements, the same pattern shows up again and again. Collect the water where it falls, filter it with simple layers, store it where it stays cool and clean, and move it by gravity instead of by pump. That is not a gimmick. That is a way of life that has been practiced across multiple generations, refined one household at a time, and passed down through family labor rather than through textbooks or sales brochures. In a Lancaster County farmhouse, before sunrise, the first water of the day is already waiting. It sits cool in a covered cistern below the floor or outside the foundation, protected from light and heat. A kitchen tap opens with a soft metallic click, and the water moves without a hum, without a motor, without a meter. A woman in a plain dark dress and white prayer cap fills a kettle, rinses a basin, and sets out breakfast. The children never hear a pump start because there is no pump to start. The only sound is the water itself, sliding through pipe and crock and tap as if it belonged there, which in their homes it does. In Holmes County, the same system serves farms spread across rolling hills. A man named Eli checks the roof gutters after a storm, clears leaves from the screen, and makes sure the first flush diverter did its job. In the basement, or sometimes in a shaded outbuilding, he inspects the charcoal layer and the sand bed. The work is ordinary to him. It is seasonal maintenance, the way other families change filters or pay utility bills. In summer, the roof gives more water than the family can use, so the surplus fills a secondary cistern for the garden and livestock. In winter, the cistern is insulated and buried deep enough to avoid freeze damage. The work changes with the season, but the logic never changes. Geauga County and Wayne County show the same continuity. Ruth in Geauga County remembers her mother pouring clean water into a ceramic crock from the gravity tap every morning. Her grandmother helped install the first version of that system. It was later improved, not replaced. That matters because it shows how the knowledge survives. It does not get abandoned after one generation. It gets adjusted, repaired, and handed forward. 3 generations is common. In some families, it is 4. The children grow up knowing where the water comes from, what the roof screens do, why the charcoal gets changed, and how to keep sediment out of the cistern after a heavy rain. In the Indiana settlements, the routine is even more visible because the properties often have multiple catchment surfaces. The house roof collects water for the kitchen. The barn roof helps fill a larger cistern for washing and animals. A family may track rainfall by sight and feel rather than by any instrument. The smell of wet shingles, the weight of the gutters, the way the cistern level drops after a dry stretch. On busy work days, the men carry buckets, inspect pipe joints, and clear the intake. The women manage the indoor storage crocks and make sure the drinking water stays protected from dust and insects. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is left to outside suppliers. What makes this knowledge so powerful is that it is practical enough to survive without ideology. The Amish use it because it works, because it is cheap, because it can be repaired with local materials, and because it gives the household control over one of the most important things in life. They do not need a monthly bill to remind them that the system is functioning. They can see the roof, the gutter, the cistern, and the tap with their own eyes. And once you understand that this simple arrangement has supported homes for generations, the next question becomes impossible to avoid. What exactly makes it work so well, and why did modern water systems ever need to become so expensive in the first place? The Amish water system works because it is not fighting physics. It is using physics exactly as nature does. Gravity moves the water. Particle size does the sorting. Surface chemistry removes the dissolved contaminants. And a biological film inside the sand bed finishes the job. Start with the simplest part: gravity. Water does not need a motor to move downhill. If you store collected rainwater above the tap or even just in a cistern placed at the right height relative to the house, gravity provides the pressure. A head height of 2.31 feet creates roughly 1 psi of pressure, so an 8-foot difference gives about 3.5 psi. That is enough for filling pitchers, feeding a sink, and supplying a simple shower. In a normal municipal system, you are paying for pumps, treatment plants, pressure stations, and the energy to move water across long distances. The Amish system removes all of that. Then comes sedimentation. When rainwater enters a cistern or pre-filter chamber, heavier particles settle first. That is basic fluid dynamics. The U.S. Geological Survey explained in its 2016 Groundwater and Filtration Materials that particles in water separate by density and size when flow velocity drops. That means a still chamber or a slow flow chamber immediately reduces the amount of dirt that reaches the main filter. No electricity is needed for this either. The water simply slows down, and gravity does the sorting. After that, the water enters the layered filter bed. This is where the real engineering happens. Coarse gravel or crushed stone catches the largest debris, usually anything above 2 millimeters. Then, coarse sand removes fine suspended solids. Fine sand catches even smaller particles and creates a dense physical barrier. Finally, activated charcoal works at the molecular level. According to the American Chemical Society in 2015, a single gram of activated carbon can have a surface area between 500 and 1,500 square meters. That enormous surface is why charcoal can absorb chlorine, many organic compounds, odors, and many taste-causing chemicals. It is not magic, it is surface area. The limestone layer at the bottom is there for chemistry. As water passes through calcium carbonate, it picks up calcium and magnesium ions, and its pH moves closer to neutral. The EPA's 2018 secondary drinking water standards note that water in the mildly alkaline range is generally more stable, less corrosive, and better tasting than acidic water. That is why the Amish water often tastes cleaner even before a laboratory test is run. The part most people never hear about is the biological layer. In a properly maintained slow sand filter, a thin living film forms in the upper sand layer. This biofilm is called the Schmutzdecke, and it is not contamination, it is the engine of the filter. The University of Delft, in its 2014 water research study, found that well-constructed slow sand filters remove greater than 99.9% of E. coli and other coliform bacteria. That is a reduction of 3 logarithmic orders of magnitude. Put plainly, if a source had 1,000 bacteria, the filter can reduce that to fewer than 1. If it had 10,000, it can reduce that to fewer than 10. That is not a marginal improvement. That is the difference between risky water and safe water. Modern commercial alternatives are more complicated and more expensive because they try to solve the same problem with more parts. A standard under-sink reverse osmosis unit pushes water through a membrane under pressure. The Water Quality Association reported in 2021 that reverse osmosis systems waste 3 to 5 gallons for every 1 gallon produced. They also require filter replacements every 6 to 12 months and usually need a pressurized feed line or an electric booster pump. So while RO produces very clean water, it does so by consuming more infrastructure, more replacement parts, and more electricity or water pressure than the Amish system needs. The Amish version has almost no moving parts. That matters more than most people realize. Every pump, every electric pressure booster, every cartridge housing, every membrane seal is a failure point. Gravity does not break. Sand does not need a circuit board. Activated charcoal does not need a plug. That is why these systems can run for decades with only routine cleaning and periodic media replacement. The numbers are what make this hard to dismiss. A household reverse osmosis system can cost $200 to $600 upfront, with $50 to $150 per year in replacement filters and significant water waste. A gravity-fed Amish-style filtration system can be built for roughly $80 to $150 in materials and maintained for $15 to $30 per year. Over 10 years, the difference is not small. It is hundreds or thousands of dollars versus a one-time, low-cost build that uses the sky, the roof, and the laws of physics. There's one more point that matters. Water quality testing does not have to be mysterious. The Centers for Disease Control in 2023 stated that boiling water for 1 minute kills all known waterborne pathogens. That means the Amish method can be paired with boiling during commissioning or after unusual contamination events, giving the household a simple, proven safety layer without turning the system into an industrial plant. So the science is not hidden because it is complicated. It is hidden because it is embarrassingly simple. Gravity, sand, charcoal, limestone, and time do what expensive systems do at a fraction of the cost. The viewer should finish this section thinking one thing: why did nobody ever tell me this? The American water system was not built to make water cheaper. It was built to make water more controllable. That is the part most people never hear, because the story is always told as public health progress. But when you follow the money, the pattern becomes hard to ignore. Start with bottled water. In 2007, the World Watch Institute reported that bottled water can cost $240,000 to $10,000 times more than tap water, and in many industrialized countries, It sells for the equivalent of $500 to $1,000 per cubic meter, while tap water in California was about $0.50 per cubic meter. By 2017, bottled water had become a $16 billion industry in the United States, according to reporting cited by Truthout. That is not a fringe consumer product. That is a major national revenue stream built on convincing people that water from a bottle is more trustworthy than water from their own roof, their own cistern, or their own municipal system. That trust did not happen by accident. It was reinforced by advertising, regulation, and lobbying. Food and water. Watch documented in 2018 that Nestlé Waters North America, Nestlé USA, the International Bottled Water Association, and Coca-Cola spent a combined $28 million lobbying Congress from 2014 through 2016. Their policy targets included bottled water rules, public water infrastructure policy, and the commercial conditions that determine whether consumers stay dependent on packaged water. Nestlé alone was able to extract 45 million gallons of water from San Bernardino National Forest in 2018, paying about $2,000 for a new federal permit, while paying no fee for the water itself, according to a 2020 congressional letter summarized by Ondas. That is the operating logic in its purest form. Low-cost access to the source, high-cost access to the consumer. Meanwhile, the regulatory environment around rainwater collection and household cisterns has been shaped by doctrines that make self-sufficiency harder than it should be. In Western states, the doctrine of prior appropriation has historically treated water as something owned through first use, not through land ownership. Scholarship on the doctrine, including the 1987 analysis in Western states' water law literature and later summaries by university extension programs, shows how that rule made rooftop collection ambiguous or outright difficult in many jurisdictions. Colorado was among the most extreme examples. Until 2016, residential rainwater harvesting was broadly restricted, and even after reforms, households were only allowed to collect a limited amount from rooftop systems. A system that can produce potable water for a family can be made technically difficult by law, even when the physics is straightforward. That is where the Amish matter. They preserved a system that did not require permission from a company, a utility, or a permit office. And because they preserved it outside the commercial market, it remained invisible to the average consumer. A gravity-fed cistern, a sand bed, activated charcoal, a limestone layer, and a rooftop collection surface cost roughly $80 to $150 in materials. Annual maintenance runs about $15 to $30. Compare that to the commercial alternative. A decent reverse osmosis system costs $200 to $600 up front, with $50 to $150 in replacement filters every year or so, and it wastes 3 to 5 gallons of water for every gallon purified, according to the Water Quality Association in 2021. That is before you even pay the municipal water bill. The bottled water alternative is worse. If a family spends just $1,000 a year on bottled water, that is $30,000 over 30 years. At $2,700 a year, it is $81,000. The Amish-style system can be built and maintained over the same period for a tiny fraction of that. In other words, the commercial water economy is not winning because it is technically better, it is winning because it is profitable. That profit is protected by more than marketing. It is protected by institutions. The EPA's 2024 PFAS drinking water rule, for example, affects 66,000 public systems and imposes about $1.5 billion in annual compliance costs on utilities. That rule is necessary because public water has become more complicated, more chemically managed, and more expensive to keep safe. But the result for the average household is the same. Complexity increases, costs rise, and self-directed alternatives appear more difficult to build legally or administratively. Meanwhile, bottled water brands can keep selling the appearance of purity at a massive markup. The quiet part is the revenue model. The bottled water industry sells water at 150 to 1,000 times the cost of municipal water, according to analysis cited by multiple water policy publications. The companies extract the source water at minimal cost, then sell the consumer a branded container and a story about safety. The consumer pays for convenience, but also for fear. That fear is amplified whenever public systems fail, whenever a boil advisory appears, whenever a report on PFAS or lead or contamination dominates the news cycle. And what never gets mentioned in those moments is that a plain, low-cost, gravity-fed system already exists. It does not create quarterly earnings calls. It does not require replacement cartridges every 6 months. It does not need a logo. It does not need a subscription. The Amish never surrendered that knowledge to the market, so the market had no incentive to advertise it. The result is a kind of quiet theft, not theft of water from the earth, theft of the idea that ordinary people can manage water themselves without buying it back in plastic, gallon by gallon, year after year. The numbers make it plain: $150 to build, $30 a year to maintain, or $1,000 to $2,700 a year forever. That is the difference between self-reliance and a business model. And once you see it that clearly, it is hard to pretend the system was ever designed around your freedom. This is the part nobody tells you because, once again, there is no profit in telling you that the sky already delivers the raw material for your drinking water. What follows is a practical, step-by-step, Amish-style rainwater collection and gravity filtration system that can be built by a homeowner with basic tools, a weekend of work, and a little patience. The goal is simple: collect clean rainwater from the roof, filter it with low-cost materials, store it safely, and move it by gravity, so you do not need a pump. Step 1. Choose your catchment surface. Use a clean metal roof if you can. Standing seam metal is best, but corrugated galvanized roofing also works. Avoid asphalt shingles for drinking water if possible, because they can leach petroleum residues and granules into the runoff. A roof area of 1,000 square feet gives you about 623 gallons of water for every inch of rainfall, based on the standard collection formula published by Texas A&M AgriLife Extension in 2018. If your region gets 30 inches of rain a year, that one roof can produce about 18,690 gallons annually. That is more than enough for a family's drinking and cooking needs. Step 2. Install gutters and downspouts. Buy 5-inch K-style gutters and one downspout kit for each side of the roof section you want to collect from. Budget about $1.50 to $3 per linear foot installed, if you do it yourself, depending on material. You want the gutters sloped slightly, about 1.16 inch per foot, toward the downspout, so water moves freely but does not race and splatter. Use gutter screens if you have trees nearby. A screened gutter reduces leaf buildup and keeps the first stage cleaner. Step 3. Add a first flush diverter. This is the most important part most people skip. The first rain after a dry spell washes dust, pollen, bird droppings, and roof debris into the system. You do not want that in your cistern. Install a first flush diverter on each downspout using 4-inch PVC pipe, a cap, a cleanout, and a small drain valve. A simple DIY diverter costs about $15 to $30 in materials. Size it to divert the first 10 to 20 gallons of each rain event, depending on how much roof area you're collecting from. For a medium roof section, an 18-inch to 36-inch standpipe is usually enough. When it fills, the cleaner water automatically bypasses into the cistern line. Step 4. Build or buy the cistern. For most homes, a 500-gallon to 1,000-gallon food-grade cistern is a good starting point. If you want longer storage between rains, go bigger. A 1,000-gallon polyethylene cistern costs about $400 to $600 new. If you can find a used food-grade tank in good condition, you may pay less. Place it in a shaded area, underground if possible, or at least inside a structure that stays cool. Shade reduces algae growth and keeps the water temperature stable. If you bury the cistern, make sure it is installed on a compacted gravel base and surrounded by proper drainage, so groundwater does not push it upward. Step 5. Build the filtration column. This is the heart of the system. Use a 55-gallon food-grade barrel or a large vertical PVC housing at least 4 feet tall. At the bottom, install a screened outlet or perforated pipe. Then add the media in layers from bottom to top: 4 inches of limestone or crushed oyster shell, 6 inches of activated charcoal, 12 inches of fine sand, 8 inches of coarse sand, 4 inches of pea gravel on top. The total material cost is about $45 to $65 if you buy everything new. Rinse the sand and charcoal thoroughly before loading the barrel. The water should enter at the top, move slowly through the layers, and exit at the bottom into a clean storage vessel or directly into a header tank. Let the filter run for 10 to 14 days before trusting it for drinking water, because the biological layer in the sand needs time to develop. Step 6. Set up gravity distribution. If you want water at a sink or tap, place a small header tank higher than the fixtures. A 20-gallon food-grade tank mounted 6 to 8 feet above the outlet gives enough pressure for a simple gravity tap. That is about 2.6 to 3.5 psi, which is enough for filling pitchers, hand washing, and light kitchen use. Run 1 2-inch food-grade tubing from the tank to the tap. If you want a hand pump instead, mount the pump directly on the cistern or on a short well riser. A good manual hand pump costs about $120 to $250 depending on model. Step 7. Make the system potable. If you are using this for drinking, do not skip testing. Use a home water test kit for bacteria and nitrates, which costs about $25 to $50, and send a sample to a local lab if you want a full analysis. The CDC in 2023 reiterated that boiling water for 1 minute kills all known waterborne pathogens. If your water source is questionable or after a major storm, boil before drinking. That is your simplest safety backstop. Climate variation, cold regions. In places like Wisconsin, upstate New York, northern Ohio, and Pennsylvania, freeze protection matters. Bury cistern lines below the frost line, which is often 3 to 5 feet deep depending on the county. Insulate exposed pipe with foam sleeves and keep the filter barrel in a heated or insulated utility room if possible. A buried cistern with a shallow above-ground gravity feed can still work year-round if the above-ground section is short and protected. Climate variation, hot or arid regions. In Arizona, New Mexico, West Texas, and parts of California, heat and evaporation are the challenge. Use a fully sealed cistern, shade it completely, and vent it only through screened openings. If rainfall is sparse, increase storage size and add collection surfaces from the house, garage, and barn. In hot climates, charcoal breaks down faster, so check and replace it more often. Also watch for algae growth if any light reaches the storage container. The most common mistake, and how to avoid it, the biggest mistake, is skipping the first flush diverter or making it too small. If the first dirty runoff enters the cistern, the whole system gets dirtier faster, and the filter has to work much harder. To avoid that, size the diverter properly and clean the roof and gutters before the rainy season begins. That one step protects everything downstream. The complete system can be built for about $550 to $900 depending on tank size and whether you buy new or used parts. That is the whole point. It is not expensive because it does not require a company, a utility, or a monthly bill. It requires only the sky, a roof, gravity, and the willingness to build what they told you you needed permission to buy. And that is exactly why the knowledge was buried. This is not an Amish curiosity. It is a proven engineering pattern that has already been deployed at scale in places that could not afford waste, failure, or dependence. The same principle: collect locally, filter simply, store safely and distribute with minimal energy, has been used in major infrastructure projects around the world. The Gansu Province Rainwater Cistern Program, Gansu, China, 1994 to 2001. This was one of the largest household rainwater harvesting efforts ever built. The program installed 3 million household cisterns serving about 1.2 million rural households in one of the driest regions of China. A performance evaluation published in 2002 by the International Water and Sanitation Center found that 94% of participating households met World Health Organization drinking water quality standards after filtration. The average household construction cost was the equivalent of $130 to $180 USD at the time. That means millions of families were supplied with clean water through a system that looks a lot more like the Amish method than like a modern municipal plant. The Tojal David Community Rainwater System, Alentejo, Portugal, 2008. In one of the driest inhabited parts of Western Europe, the municipality of Tojal David installed a shared rooftop rainwater collection and gravity filtration system serving 340 households. The system was documented by the European Commission's Switch project in 2012. Each home received water through a slow sand and activated carbon filtration setup, and the reported result was a 74% reduction in household water purchasing costs. Water quality testing showed compliance with European Union standards for turbidity and coliform bacteria. This was not a pilot fantasy. It was living infrastructure serving real families in a real climate with measurable savings. Hamad International Airport Rainwater System, Doha, Qatar, 2014. Opened in 2014, Hamad International Airport incorporated a rooftop rainwater harvesting system covering about 600,000 square feet of terminal roof. According to engineering reporting from the Qatar Civil Aviation Authority in 2015, the system collects and processes roughly 8 million gallons per year and reduced municipal water consumption by 18%. The water is collected, pre-filtered, stored, and used for non-potable applications inside a massive modern facility. That is the same logic as the Amish system, only scaled upward. Catch the water where it falls, move it through simple filtration, and use gravity and storage instead of endless pumping and treatment. 3 very different places, 3 very different scales, same result. Clean water, lower costs, and less dependence on outside systems. That is the important part. The Amish farmhouse in Geauga County was not an exception. It was a small, quiet version of a system that has already proven itself in deserts, airports, and entire provinces. The engineers who built those systems did not invent a new idea. They rediscovered an old one, the same one that has been sitting under that farmhouse, hidden in plain sight all along. I want you to do something before this video ends. Drop your state in the comments and tell me what you currently pay for water: bottled, filtered, municipal, or all 3 combined. I want the real numbers from real people, because when you see this across enough households, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. If you are still buying bottled water every week or paying for filters that need constant replacement, I understand why. That system was built to feel normal. It was built to feel necessary. But the truth is, a roof, a cistern, and gravity can do what most people think requires a company, a bill, and a lot more money than it actually does. The Amish never accepted the idea that water had to be a subscription. They kept the knowledge close, used it daily, and passed it down because it worked. This channel, Tradition Done Right, exists for exactly this reason. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. I mean that seriously. The algorithm will not bring this to you on its own. It does not reward content that helps people spend less and depend less. If you want the next documentary to reach you, you have to choose to stay. And the next one is a hard one to ignore. I am going to show you an Amish thermal mass wall system documented in Lancaster County farmhouses that keeps interiors between 64 and 71 degrees Fahrenheit through Pennsylvania winters with no gas bill and no electric heat. The construction cost is about $180 in materials, not a retrofit costing thousands, not a modern high-efficiency furnace, a wall system. I also have the 1978 code revision that made passive thermal designs difficult to approve in new construction, and the lobbying history behind it. That one changes how you look at heating forever. That video is next, and the numbers are not small. Until then, remember this: the most expensive thing in your kitchen is not the water itself. It is the belief that you were never meant to control where it comes from.